This is a little bit different for us, doing a hit-and-run fatality.
Yeah, our deadly weapon is a car. On the night of July the 6th, 1988, 17-year-old Rochelle Escalante went to a party at a friend's house. She got into a fight, and then minutes later, she ends up dead on the side of the road. Autopsy reports indicated that Rochelle was struck by a car, but whether it was an accident or murder has never been answered.
In all the cases that we've done, Rochelle is our youngest.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. She's really like a baby.
I'll never forget the day that I was told.
And I was just like kind of in shock.
While the cops were out there working the scene, they saw this 1979 black Trans Am that kept circling by. So they followed it, and the car went directly to the party where Rochelle had been earlier.
The officers questioned all the kids at the party that night.
Kathy and Rochelle started arguing.
I got out of the car when Rochelle started arguing.
Everybody seen her once she left.
But no one would give them a straight answer.
Well, most of the time, we don't take any hit and runs because they're usually impossible to solve. But the thing about the case when I first read it is there's so much to play with. There's so many witnesses.
Right.
So our hope here is that now that most of our witnesses are in their late 30s and they had their own kids and they'll feel some guilt, maybe they'll tell us the truth. We've invited two of the best interviewers that we know to help on this case. Houston Police Detective Johnny Bonds.
They're pretty damn smart.
And LAPD homicide investigator Orlando Martinez.
That's the thing. I wanted to ask you what happened.
Our goal this week is to find out if it was a murder, and if it was, to get enough evidence to take it to the DA to convince him to present the case to a grand jury.
It has been 16 years and still no answers.
Police consider her killing a cold case.
Years later, the case is still unsolved.
There are so many cold cases out there just waiting to be solved.
The crime scene ultimately tells the story of the murder.
We want to bring justice to these victims.
Hi, Jim Durnan.
Nice to meet you. Sergeant Jim Durnan with the Globe PD is the man who called us about the case.
Chief John Bonds, nice to meet you.
Chief Martinez. I knew Rochelle. We went to school together. We were the same age. She was on one of my Little League baseball teams. And pretty sure we made our Holy Communion together. Personally, knowing the victim gave me very strong motivation to solve this case.
Okay, so Jim, now that we're all here, why don't you just start from the beginning and tell us the story?
July of '88, okay, there was a house party. Sometime during the evening, our victim, Rochelle, got in an altercation with a couple people. Rochelle left the party walking on foot, and then that was the last they had seen her. We have one witness. He came across Rochelle alongside the roadway. So when the officers arrived, she had, we believe, just been struck because she was breathing. So the officers secure the area, and they observe this Trans Am going by 2 or 3 times, you know, at 3 in the morning. They become suspicious of that. So they see it turn, and they do find it at this house, which is the house where this party was at.
Most people don't think of a car as being a deadly weapon, but it is. The Globe Police Department has for a long, long time believed that Rochelle was possibly murdered by that Trans Am. We need to find out whether or not it was a murder. We need to find out what really happened out there that night.
The owner of this vehicle, Angel Gray, supposedly loaned this car to one of our possible suspects, but he was not at the party.
Okay, so let's put our suspects up there. We're gonna put Laurie up first.
She lied about ever being in the Trans Am, yet she's the one that borrowed the car that day.
She's jealous.
Her boyfriend's two-timing her with our victim.
He was at a party the night before and had kissed the victim.
Right.
And she knew about this. Lori Wright is one of the main suspects in this because 15, not even old enough to drive, brings the Trans Am to the party. So she's got the means and she's got the motive. She's jealous as can be about Rochelle kissing Tony Romero, her boyfriend.
So guys, I'm gonna put up now Tony Romero, the man everybody's fighting over. 2 women fighting over him. And Tony was on parole back then.
Tony Romero is Lori Wright's boyfriend. The biggest thing is, Tony says, I had the keys to the car all night. This is the possible murder weapon. You say you got the keys, and it's your girlfriend fighting with everybody anyways. It makes you a pretty good suspect, too.
We're gonna put Kathy Arana.
She actually had a fight with the victim that night.
And then we were also told that Kathy and Rochelle were, like, in a relationship together.
Yeah.
Kathy and Rochelle supposedly were lovers. So anytime you've got a relationship and it's heated at that moment, and then all of a sudden one ends up dead, clearly that's one of the first people you're gonna look at. But now one of the things that's a major thing is Kathy is deceased.
Yeah, that's kind of big, huh? I think it's kind of ironic that Kathy Arana passed away in a car wreck herself. That complicates the case. We can't talk to her. We can't eyeball her and see what we think about her. And it just frustrates you. But that's what cold cases are all about.
Yep, I think we need to add one more thing up there.
Who?
Unknown suspect, unknown vehicle.
It is a possibility that Rochelle's death was an accident. So in order to solve this case, we need to interview any possible witnesses and suspects, find out if any physical evidence can prove that the Trans Am was our murder weapon, and investigate all scenarios for how Rochelle ended up dead on that highway 25 years ago.
We really feel like it's important in this case to meet the family first. That way we get a better sense of who Rochelle was. Did she have any issues with people that would make them want to kill a 17-year-old girl?
I'm Yolanda McClary. Nice to
Bonnie.
meet you.
How are you?
I am a mom and a grandma, and I couldn't imagine anything happening to my child or any of my grandchildren. So when I look at Bonnie, my heart just goes out to her for her daughter.
Thank y'all very much for letting us come talk to you. You raised these kids by yourself?
Basically.
Who's the oldest?
Buddy.
And how much older are you than Rochelle?
Just 1 year.
Almost 13
So
months.
when it happened, you were
13
18?
months. Yes.
Okay. And Gabriel, how old were you?
I was 9 years old at the time.
Okay. And what was Rochelle like when she was little?
A little feisty.
Yeah, she could hold her own.
Sort of like me right now. I can tell like it
Well,
is.
they were both the same, basically. They grew up together, and everybody thought they were twins.
Yeah, it seems
So she's kind of tomboyish?
Yeah.
She plays sports?
Yes.
Basketball star.
Very much.
Really?
Yeah. Straight A student.
She was on
Really?
the student council also.
Wow.
Good future. Yeah, bright future. She was too smart.
Bonnie, how'd you find out?
I was at work, and an officer came to come and tell me. It was a fatal accident.
I got a call about 2-ish, 2:30, somewhere around that in the morning, that my sister was dead from one of the best friends and family friends that we had. She is now deceased, Kathy Arana.
And she's the one who called you?
Yeah. But the thing was, she was telling my sister was dead before all.
Before she
Before even
Before
the
it
cops
happened?
called me or before any... But yeah, she knew.
I'd heard Lori had her boyfriend driving. It was just Tony Romero.
This is where it just all turns into one big shady mess.
Clearly, Bonnie has spent the last 25 years thinking that her daughter was run over intentionally with a car and that it was a murder. But even though Bonnie and her family have always had suspicions about it being a murder and who did it, there hasn't been enough evidence to prove that. When you're talking to a woman like Bonnie who's lost her baby, and it's never supposed to happen that way, you get mad, and it makes you that much more motivated to want to try and get something done about it.
Thank you so much.
Give me a hug.
Thank you. Kelly and Yolanda, they're very caring women. And to take the time to come all the way down here to do this, it's fantastic. And I'm very, very grateful for them.
Now that we know a little bit more about Rochelle, we need to go back to the last place we know she was alive. This was a party house located right off the main highway. I want to figure out if one or more of our suspects could have left in the Trans Am, hit Rochelle on the highway, and made it back before anyone noticed they were gone. From the reports, we know that Rochelle left the party around 2 a.m. on foot. At approximately 2:30, a witness saw Rochelle on that main road. By 2:45, the officers were on the scene, and Rochelle is dead. So we're looking at a 15 to 20 minute window during which Rochelle was killed. That's with us super taking our time, 3 minutes.
This is fast.
It wouldn't take long to come down that hill, do this, and go right back up, and no one would ever even know you were gone. In 1988, 17-year-old Rochelle Escalante was last seen alive at a house party. Police have always suspected that one or more of the kids at the party that night hit Rochelle with a 1979 black Trans Am. So now we want to look closer at exactly how did Rochelle die and make sure that nothing about her injuries or the crime scene could rule out the black Trans Am as the murder weapon.
What do you want to do first?
I want to find exactly where the body was.
And he was there, right?
Right.
Ray Hernandez was a brand new officer back in 1988, and he is actually the officer that drove up on the scene, and he can tell us from his own memory exactly what happened that night.
When I first got here, she's laying like pretty much in this position. I just got off my shift at about 2 o'clock that morning and come around the corner there by Evans Street and noticed there was something laying in the roadway. Then I realized it was a human being. She's still trying to grasp her breath. She's still trying to breathe. As soon as I got out of the car, I realized that she was still alive. Her eyes were open, I remember that. I did try to talk to her, but there was no acknowledgement that we were even there with her. I stayed with her the whole time. And within probably 2 or 3 minutes, she stopped breathing.
Just bring the car up to right here.
Our goal today is to use a demonstrative Trans Am, a similar Trans Am to ours, to see whether or not such a Trans Am could possibly have been used to inflict these kinds of injuries on Rochelle.
This is not a high-speed impact.
No.
The only broken bone in her body is her skull.
Right. What she also has on the back of her right leg is a part of a tire impression. If she gets clipped in the leg, bam, she comes flying back. This could be part of what she hit on her head, too. And there's the other thing. There is always the theory of going under the car. Look at how low this is here.
No, I can't go under that car.
If a Trans Am actually hit Rochelle, I don't believe it literally ran over her, but I think it's possible she hit the side of the car and then her body gets released. She does skid across the roadway a little bit, which is causing some of these abrasions, but she's not being dragged underneath. Well, you know, we're hoping the evidence will help us. We do have some physical evidence to test this week that we're hoping ties the Trans Am to the victim. Paint, you come in hard enough contact with it, can flake off. That can lodge into fibers. And that's actually what they're gonna look for.
And that's at the lab?
That's at the lab. In 1988, black paint chips were recovered from the Trans Am, as well as fibers that we're going to see microscopically if we can find any of these on the victim's clothing. And we also have a partial tire impression on the victim's pants. Try to match that up to some photos that we have of the tires on the Trans Am.
A lot of time has passed. Maybe people are willing to talk now.
After coming out to the scene today and reenacting things, it's possible that this Trans Am could have caused those injuries to Rochelle's body. So we're going to continue on down this path and try and find witnesses that can say which one of our suspects who might possibly have a motive to get in the car and hit Rochelle 25 years ago. From the reports, Anna Reyes was the last person to see Rochelle walking on foot away from the party. So we need to call her to see what all information she could help us with.
We were all drinking up there, and we were playing quarters and taking shots. Rochelle Escalante had hickeys on her neck from Tony Romero. So Kathy was mad because Rochelle had the hickeys on her neck, and they started arguing, and it escalated outside. Rochelle said, F this, Anna, I'm leaving. And then when I turned back around to look, Rochelle was gone.
All right, did Lori and Rochelle have a problem that night?
Just 2 nights before that, we were in the truck, and I looked in the back of the truck, and I seen Rochelle and Tony Romero kissing. Lori was sitting in the front with me, and she happened to see the same thing, and she started crying. And that was like 2 nights prior to that happening. And so we all left, but when we left, we didn't go down the road that she went down. We went a different way. And so if it happened already then, we would have missed her.
From the report, we know that shortly after 3, Tony Romero loads Anna Reyes, Kathy Arena, Lori Wright, and Luis Perez into the Trans Am to take them home. As Tony leaves the house, he turns down La Mesa Terrace, thereby missing the accident scene at the bottom of Evans Avenue. Tony drops Anna Reyes off and then continues north to take Kathy Arena and Luis Perez home, passing by the accident scene.
Kathy told me the next day that they seen the police, that they pulled over, and that she got out the vehicle and said, I want to know if that's my best friend.
Kathy told you that?
Yes.
There's no way that Kathy stopped. It's not in any report that she ever stopped and looked at the body. Kathy's jealous. She's lying. It all seems suspicious.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Oh, you're welcome.
After talking to Anna Reyes, she didn't really help us wipe any suspects off the board, but she still keeps our focus pretty intensely geared at Kathy. Now we're at the point in our investigation where we would go talk to Kathy, but she's not alive, so we can't do that. So the next best thing is to listen to all of her interviews that are taped and see if there's any little thing that gives us any information or insight into what happened that night.
Well, it was about 2 o'clock, so I asked Tony and Lori to take me home. Rochelle didn't want them to drive, so with Rochelle, I started arguing.
Then she walked off.
Well, Anna Reyes was the last one to talk to her.
Okay, Anna Reyes talked to her.
She tried to get Rochelle to stay there so we could talk.
Okay.
But when she went up and got me, Rochelle already took off running. She was nowhere in sight.
Rochelle has left. Everybody got in the car to go home. Who gets in the car?
Me, Tony, Lori, Anna, and Luis.
We know that after dropping Anna Reyes off that night, the Trans Am continued northbound on the highway, passing the crime scene. Kathy Arana was still in the car at this time, along with Tony Romero, Lori Wright, and Luis Perez.
And it was about 3:15 when we passed her, and we seen Rochelle in the car. We seen a body in the body bag. And we passed by there about 4 times. Because I wanted to know if it was her, because, I was worried about it.
Okay. Okay, what was the conversation in the car when you guys passed?
When we passed, I go, I hope to God that's not Rochelle.
Mm-hmm.
They go, it isn't. And Lori, me and Luis were there arguing, and Lori and Tony just stayed real quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, man, if that's Rochelle, I'd never forgive myself. So we were best friends, and they go, well, it wasn't.
Who said it wasn't? It wasn't.
Lori. I told Tony to turn back around. We went back around, and he looked.
Why don't you stop?
I swear to God, I wanted to. I told him to stop, and Luis told him just to keep on going.
What have you heard as to who ran over Rochelle?
I heard that Tony and Lori had snuck away from the party. I went down there and beat her up and then threw it.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy's pointing the finger pretty hard at Tony and Lori, but she's the one who was fighting with Rochelle and the one with the most motive that night. So it seems pretty suspicious that Kathy's blaming it all on them so clearly now.
Rumors say that you and Rochelle had something going on. Any truth to that?
That's personal, though.
I know, but did you or didn't you?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, that's all.
We always fight, but we always make up again.
In listening to Kathy's tapes, she didn't seem that upset about what happened that night to Rochelle, and they were supposed to be really close. At this point, we haven't read anything that tells us that Kathy was acting alone in Rochelle's death, but there's nothing to say that she wasn't involved with Tony and Lori in the car that night. So now Johnny and Sergeant Dernan are going to go and try and find friends of Kathy's. Maybe we can find out from her friends if she ever said anything to them over the years about what happened that night.
What did Kathy tell y'all?
She remembered Rochelle leaving, and then shortly after that, they noticed that Lori and somebody else had left.
Kathy was not with those two people?
No.
Did she tell you anything about what happened to Rochelle?
Kathy, as she understood it, somebody ran over.
Yeah, but who? Did she say who?
Lori.
Did you question her? Like, how do you know it was Lori?
If Kathy wanted to let me know, she would have told me.
Did Kathy say she was in the car when it happened?
She just said that I guess Rochelle was riding a bike.
Rochelle was on a bicycle?
Yes.
You're sure about that?
Where did that come from?
That is, wow.
How you doing?
Extremely tired and confused.
And confused, too?
Yeah. I'm like, let's put 15 different stories in a hat and just reach and pull one out. Kathy is very suspicious but from the fact that she told so many people so many different stories. And we're trying to look at scenarios how this happened. We don't have any evidence that Kathy had the car, that she ever drove the car, that she went by herself. Tony and Lori could have just said, come on, let's go get her. She could have gone with them. It's time to start looking into those two.
Today, we're going to go into town and try and talk to Luis Perez, who was at the party that night. Luis was also in the car when it passed by the crime scene that night, so we're hoping that he can tell us more about what happened there.
Were you there? Who were your friends with?
With Kathy and all them. And
so Kathy invited you?
We were at the party, then those two sisters show up.
Do you remember what their names were?
I don't know. Lori, I don't know.
Do you remember Lori's sister's name?
I remember, I know she was white.
We know that Shauna Wright is Lori's sister, but according to the reports, she's never been interviewed about this case.
They were mad at Rochelle.
So what are they saying?
Something about a guy or boyfriend. Her mom was around too.
Beverly, that was her name?
Yeah, I think so. They were always together.
So she just always partied with you guys?
Oh, yeah. She acted like she was a young girl. She loved to party, get high. She would let her, any guy mess around with the daughters and her, but she was always with them. She was a good mom.
She was a good mom?
We know from the reports that Beverly Wright is Lori Wright's mom. And according to Luis Perez, she's not going to get the Mother of the Year award. Lori's sister, Shauna Wright, looks pretty questionable, too. Shauna was also at the party that night, so we need to look at mom and sister. It's a good chance Lori's told them something, but before we bring them in, we need to talk to anyone who knew these Wright women.
Lori and Shauna, everybody was scared of them. They were really big troublemakers.
Just got a street named LaBev. Beverly is her name.
Beverly used to always try to get with high school kids. She was a hoe back then.
She was a dirty player. If Lori got into it, Beverly got into it. Like two peas in a pot on that.
Bev had hit me with her car.
Yeah, she ran my ass over.
When did she try to hit you with a car?
She did.
It was Shauna that threatened me.
Mom and daughter would go and jam people up, you know what I mean?
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. It's nice meeting you.
Well, I thank you for being honest with us.
These Wright women sure seem to have a reputation. It's time to bring in Shauna and Bev. Shauna was at the party, and from what we're hearing, Bev might have been there too. We need to find out if Lori told them anything and possibly find out if they're involved in Rochelle's death at all too.
You don't think I had anything to do with this, do you?
Let's go back to the party, and it seems that there was some disagreement.
I remember Rochelle and Tony, they were kissing, and Kathy got mad. They started arguing, and Rochelle took off, like, to run down the street. I just know that whole party, I never left the whole party. I mean, I stayed there the whole time.
Was your mom at that party that night?
No, my mom was not.
Did she show up at any point during the evening?
My mom was at home.
All right, Trent, I want you to be real honest with me right now. You think Lori is involved in this?
I don't know.
And she said, I don't know, not no. It's a little interesting that her own sister can't say for sure that she doesn't think she did it.
When if my sister or Tony or whoever, they had something to do with that, they just need to say that so this thing can be over with. I mean, I can imagine how much pain her family's in, you know.
If you ever confronted Lori and asked her?
She would lie right to my face. I know she would. But I would think my mom would have at least told me something.
What do you think our chances are of your mom or Lori telling us what happened?
They're gonna stick together like glue. There's my mom, here's Lori, and here's me. They're like this, and I'm over here, and that's the way it's always been.
Talking to Shauna, it's pretty obvious that she's not the same person that she was 25 years ago. She's not close to Lori anymore, and it's pretty obvious she's not trying to cover for her. It's also pretty clear that we're going to have our work cut out for us talking to Beverly, but surprisingly enough, she's ready to come down and talk to us.
We decided since Mom, Beverly, has this thing for hot, young Hispanic males, we'd offer a carrot out there and see what happens.
Can you take one for the team?
Is that me?
Yeah.
Beverly Wright, or LaBev, likes young Hispanic boys, and it is very important to get her to talk to us. So hopefully I can use that to my advantage.
That's
all right. If Lori confided in somebody, it would be her mother, so she can tell us something that's going to break the case open.
We've interviewed several witnesses in the 25-year-old suspected hit-and-run murder of Rochelle Escalante. Beverly Wright, the mother of Lori Wright, one of our main suspects, has agreed to come in today. From what everyone tells us, Beverly Wright and her daughter Lori are really tight.
They're gonna stick together like glue.
Beverly may have been at the party that night, so we need to find out what Lori might have told her over the years and make sure that she's not involved in all this.
Well, we'll just get right down to it. Were you
And I had
at the party that night?
No, I was home that night.
You did. So how did you first hear about...
The incident?
Yeah.
And I got a phone call. I think it was a PD office. I think they had taken just my daughter Lori to question her, I believe, and the people that were in the black Trans Am.
So the Trans Am? Is that how Lori got to the party?
I don't know how she got to the party.
So you weren't the one who borrowed the car from Angel?
No, I didn't. I was home that night.
Who borrowed his car?
I don't know who borrowed the car.
What if we told you Lori borrowed the car?
Well, then you'd have to ask her.
No, I'm telling you, Lori borrowed the
Well,
car.
I'm telling you, I don't know.
Lori borrowed the car.
Okay, well, that's what you're saying. I don't know. I'm not trying to defend my daughter right now.
Okay.
But I know she didn't have anything to do with that, what happened to that little girl. I know she didn't.
Okay. Okay, so what did Lori tell you happened? Normal human nature. You're gonna ask her, what the hell was that about?
No,
what happened?
I'm not.
You're not gonna ask your 16-year-old daughter.
You're jumping. I don't know.
As a mother, you're going to ask her what happened.
What did she think happened to Rochelle?
She doesn't know what happened. Nobody knows what happened, obviously.
See the body language?
Mm-hmm.
She's closed up.
Did you ever run your vehicle up close to Patricia Campos and maybe like get close to her?
No. Bev had hit me with her car.
Yeah, she ran my ass over.
When did she try to hit you with a car?
She did.
Why would I run him over?
I don't know, I'm asking you.
I don't know what you're talking about right now.
Did you like to party back in those days? Hang out with your daughter's friends?
No, not really.
She loved to party, but she was always with them.
You guys, this is breaking my family. This has been a haunting thing, you know, it's like never dying rumor. So my family hasn't been at peace.
If that was your daughter, wouldn't you want us to do whatever we
Yes,
could?
I would. Everybody needs the closure with this. I need the closure with this. And I hope and I pray to God that you find closure to this.
Right, and that's what we're trying to do by talking to you. She's more worried about her family's reputation in town, not about Rochelle getting killed. And that's not normal, unless Lori had something to do with it.
After speaking to Shauna and Beverly Wright, Lori Wright remains as a main suspect in this case. But before we interview her or Tony Romero, we need to call the lab.
Good afternoon, Microtrade.
To find out if there was any evidence at all that was submitted that could conclusively say that the black Trans Am that Lori brought to the party is our murder weapon.
Okay, so the drivers from the car were entirely different from the victim's shirt. And after searching the shirt of the victim, we didn't find any paint chips that were consistent. As for the tire impressions, it's more of the same, unfortunately, for your investigation.
What all this boils down to is the lab hasn't been able to tell us anything to link us definitively to the car. I mean, it would be nice if we had a great, big, old, pretty connection, but we don't. Rarely in cold cases do you have physical evidence that leads to who did it. If you did, the case would have never gone cold. This does not mean that our Trans Am is not the murder weapon, because we still have a lot of circumstantial evidence linking it to possibly being the murder weapon. Now it's time to start talking to our actual suspects. Kathy Arana is deceased, so we need to talk to Tony and we need to talk to Lori. We're going to talk to Tony first because it seems like if he was involved, it was out of some kind of sense of loyalty to Lori. So we're hoping that that loyalty has long since gone away. Tony is currently serving time in the Arizona Department of Corrections for forgery.
I'm Johnny Barnes.
So Johnny and Sergeant Durnan are going to go out there and interview him.
There's something here about this whole thing that just doesn't sound right. There's 20 minutes there that something happened. She didn't get very far. What happened during that 20 minutes?
Did Lori and Kathy go looking for her? Is it possible Lori and Kathy?
Lori jumped in the car and took off. Tell us, and we'll leave you alone.
Lori did not take off. Lori's not gonna have power over me. She's not gonna take off in the car. She's not gonna take my keys from me. I don't care. I had that car all night. It's my story. Anybody can tell you anything else. I had control of the car. I had the keys. Nobody moved that vehicle.
Tony is consistently saying that he was in control of the car and he's the only person that drove it. What he needs to understand is that if we can get an admission from Lori, or we get enough to prove she did it, then he's had it. Because if you're a co-conspirator in a crime, you're guilty. You say you're driving all night, and we can't understand why you're taking the rap.
I'm not taking the rap for this. I had the keys. Nobody at that party killed her, or accidentally killed her.
You're being pretty macho about this, and it
yes, because...
Sit back down.
No, because look, man, you guys are wanting me to... That Lori did it. Lori didn't do it.
Have a seat. Kathy's lying, and unfortunately, we can't talk to her. She's gone. Tony will not change his story. He's adamant he's the only driver of that car. Nobody else drove that car the time she was killed.
That leaves us with Lori.
Yep.
It's all going to be on Lori.
Yep.
We're getting ready to interview our final suspect, Lori Wright, in the hit-and-run death of Rochelle Escalante. One of the reasons why Lori Wright is a suspect in this case is because she has lied to the cops since day one. By the time that Lori and Tony drop off Kathy Arena and Luis Perez, officers on scene have seen the black Trans Am drive by multiple times. Lori and Tony drive the Trans Am back to the party house. The officers locate the Trans Am and talk to Lori right outside the party. She immediately lied, saying she was not in the Trans Am, even though the officers saw her. When officers questioned the kids from the party the next day, they learned that Lori had called everyone and told them to lie.
She called me up and she goes, Anna, always talk to you because they already talked to us. Just tell them that Angel was there. He was driving the car, and that.
She goes, Luis, whatever you do, if the police talk to you, whatever, tell them that I wasn't in the car and that Tony wasn't driving. The guy Angel was driving the car.
Her story was that Angel Garay, owner of the Trans Am, was at the party and had driven the car that night, which we know was not true. It's time to bring Lori in and confront her with all those lies from way back then.
This is Johnny.
Johnny Bonds,
I don't know if,
have a seat. Basically, what we're trying to do is find out what happened to Rochelle, and I want to hear what you saw and what you know.
I understand.
When the police pulled up there, where were you?
In the house.
In the house. Do you remember them asking you if you were in the car? Do you remember telling them that it was Angel Garay's car and that he parked it and left?
That is not true.
No, it's documented in the report.
Well,
I don't think the officers would make that up.
Well, that's not true. I said that I borrowed the car from Angel.
Yeah.
Which that was the truth. And
do you remember telling the officers that no, you hadn't been in the car?
No, I do not remember that.
The next day after you're home, you have telephone conversations with people that we know, and you tell them when the police come to talk to you, tell them Angel was driving.
That's not true.
Why would people separately make that up?
I have no idea.
This is a report. I asked Lori if she had been in the black Trans Am when he passed the accident scene. She stated she was not in the vehicle. I asked her who the vehicle belonged to. She stated Angel, last name unknown. Angel had been at the party and had left his vehicle parked in the yard.
That's not true. That's not true.
Why would that officer say
I don't
so?
know, but that's not true.
You're 15 years old when this happens, and you're saying that some cop here hates you so much that he put a lie in a police report.
Listen to me.
The reason you are the main suspect in this case is you lied for no reason.
You know what?
If you had not done anything, why would you lie?
I don't know why people are lying, saying that I said not to. That, I don't recall any of that.
So independent people
Lying.
They're pretty damn smart. Let's tell the police.
I have no idea why somebody would say that. Can I go? Do I have to stay here any longer?
No, you don't.
Oh, if y'all talk, I'll be gone. I could kind of understand her lying to the cops then. You know, it was a scared 15-year-old drunk kid, but now she's lying about lying. There's no reason for her to lie about it now. It just heaps more suspicion on it.
She's denying everything the cops said, and all of her friends are lying about everything they said 25 years ago. Everybody's conspiring against her. I mean, come on.
We can't prove it's the Trans Am, and that's problematic, I think.
By Lori coming in today and giving even more inconsistent statements, it doesn't clear things up against her. The only reason to keep working on this case is if we believe that that Trans Am was the one that hit Rochelle that night. So Sergeant Durnan is going to call a trucker who's listed in the report as being one of the only people who was on the road that night. What we want to know is whether or not that trucker specifically saw taillights going up the road toward the party house that night.
My father-in-law had picked me up. We were going westbound. And I happened to notice out of the corner of my eye a shadow of what seemed like it could have been a body or a person or something.
Did you see any brake lights on the side streets or anything like there had been traffic there right before you passed?
Not that I noticed, no. The one thing that I do remember is before we came upon that scene, I saw a yellow truck going eastbound.
Had you ever seen that truck before, or had you ever seen it after that night?
No.
This is not good. This is the main drag through Globe. It's where all the business and all the trucks go. It's not a local truck known to the cops, known to people. It would be impossible to ever know for sure what truck was driving through town that night. We're never going to find that truck. The yellow semi is not just reasonable doubt. It could very well be what hit her.
Easily, with the semi being so high, could have cracked the back of her head there. It's why we see very slight abrasion to her.
The truck may not even have a clue that he hit her.
That's huge.
Right. Yes,
I mean, we now have a brand new vehicle at the most crucial time possible.
That's reasonable doubt right there.
The semi could be what hit her, and it might not have ever known it, and it's really just an accident. Here's the reality of working on cold cases. Sometimes you learn new information that actually goes against what you thought. And if the Trans Am is not the car that's involved in this, then it's not Lori and Tony or anybody else who has any kind of knowledge or information at that party. You're never going to be able to make this any clearer.
Unless one of them confesses, it's pretty much exactly what you said.
Well, they're never going to confess. The only way this case can ever be solved now is if an eyewitness emerges or if somebody confesses. It's been 25 years. If an eyewitness truly existed, you would think they would have come forward by now. And a confession in the real world in a murder case is always very unlikely. Kathy is deceased, and Lori and Tony are sticking to their stories. Jim, I think what you need to do is take all your notes and all the tapes and everything that we did this week and put them all in your box and tape it up and not look at it anymore, because there's nothing else you can do. There's nobody else you're going to find. It's done for good.
We don't have the answers what happened to Rochelle, but I hope Bonnie and her sons take some comfort in the fact that we made every effort we could and not feel that she was forgotten, because she's not.
Not being able to solve a case, the hardest part about it is to go back and talk to the family.
Good to see you.
Come on in.
I'm the one that's got to step up to the plate and tell the family it's over with. And it's bad, it sucks, it's horrible. We can't tell you for sure who hit Rochelle. You watch Bonnie sit there and try to accept the news. I can't. We talked to everybody we could find. We know about when it happened, and we thought we could be able to say that there were no cars except for the Trans Am in this time period. And today, we heard that there's a semi-truck that's seen right in that same time period. And with all the other things, with people changing their stories, with memories, with Kathy being gone, I don't think that you are ever going to have a case strong enough to present in a courtroom. We talk about it in legalistic terms and as a lawyer and as a jury and when they convict. She doesn't care about all that lawyer stuff. She just wants to know in her own heart who hurt her baby.
Let it be.
Yeah, I thank you for doing what you could do. Just have to let it be, like I said. I feel at ease, though. I really do, with the information that you gave us. But she's always with us, and she has been these few days. But she knows what we're all going through, and she's around. She is.
I love you, Rochelle. Marie Escalante, I love you with all my heart.
Love you and miss you greatly. What I'm grateful for is that Kelly and Yolanda, they really did try. She might have been taken away from us, but she will still always live on with us. I love you, sister. Never forget you.
There are unsolved cases all over this country, and the best that we can do is open them up and work our hardest to get somewhere, but this is the real world, and there's no way around the fact that sometimes we just can't solve them. I think that Bonnie and Bud and Gabriel have dealt with losing Rochelle pretty well for a family that lost so much. I hope that with a little bit of time, they can have some peace.